Hello, this is Real History with Melissa, and today is June the 4th, 2026, and I'm so excited to be talking today in a shared production. In fact, let me turn it over to you, Nick, since it's a shared production. I'm Real History with Melissa.
And I'm Nick with Hayes Reviews. And yeah, today we are collaborating. We've got a very exciting guest to talk to who's brought out a very important book. And I think we're going to have an excellent conversation.
Great. So this is Dom Watterson of Sheep Farm, and I have talked to him on his podcast, and he and his brother Chris, they've talked to me on my podcast, and now we're all doing this together so that we can talk about a book that you just released. Was it March or April?
It was yeah, it's middle of March. Yeah.
Okay. Called Traitors. Now, I don't know if you have a cover up that you can show. Otherwise, I do. Oh, there you go.
I've got it
Great.
here. Let me
It's got
show
one.
this
Excellent.
wonderful artwork, Traitors, the pandemic politicians, and the like timeless evergreen quote on the front about power, which tends to corrupt with absolute power, corrupting absolutely. So there it is.
Okay. Good
And
deal.
there's a side view. It's quite a hefty tome, I
It's
must say.
thick. Yeah.
And you've got
Now,
the hardback version there, Nick, I think, haven't you? Uh,
Yeah,
yes.
and you know what?
and
The hardback version, because of the printing uh, restrictions, doesn't have the 77 pages of footnotes in. So, so that's actually missing 77 pages of footnotes because apparently they can't fit it in the hardback version. So there's a QR code at the back instead for all the
Yeah.
many, many hundreds of source notes. But it's
And
good.
there,
yeah.
yeah, the source notes are amazing here. So I've got a PDF that Dom sent me to read, and it is so well sourced. And what I just said before we started recording here is this is going to be kind of a go-to book for me for looking up people that, like I just said, for instance, I have gotten into the Aspen Institute researching that. And Walter Isaacson was the CEO of that. And we're told he's a journalist, and then he was the CEO of the Aspen Institute, and he's a aw shucks biographer of, people like Jennifer, is it Doudna of CRISPR fame and CRISPR technology. He did the authorized biography of Elon Musk. And as it turns out, thanks to Dom Watterson and his book Traitors, I now know that Walter Isaacson is up to his eyeballs in intelligence connections through his family relations. Not just the obvious, well, I think the Aspen Institute is up to no good here. So I'm so impressed by the research.
Well, there was a couple of people that I would say Alan was one of them who's not with us anymore, and also Dave McGowan's work, who I always sort of refer back to that type of philosophy and research that they did. And obviously some of the other people I do quite a bit of work with as well, Mike Williams, Mark Devlin, Matt Sergiu, I'm a brother, um, who you sort of look up to all your peers that you want them to be able to say, oh, I like that. And you're one of them as well, Melissa. I haven't met Nick before. It's so nice to hear what you're saying to me because that's the sort of feedback I want to hear, that you found something new out, because that's what
Oh,
I did. Yeah, you know.
I found all kinds of new things out. That was just the
Yeah.
one that, that was
Mm,
last night when I was reading. I'm like, wow,
mm.
because I've gotten so much into Aspen and I did not know that family connection. So,
And the beauty is, it doesn't take you 2 seconds to be able to say, oh, I wonder if Dom's right. Oh, he is.
yeah,
It doesn't take 2 seconds to check it, does it,
no.
either?
Well, this is something else that I wanted to say. One of the things about reading it, I mean, I'm this way, and I know Nick is too, where you gotta, oh, okay, let me put that down and then go do my own research on it. And oh my goodness, I would read a paragraph and then I'd be at the internet going, really? Well, that's fantastic. I mean, Crispin Blunt got me going way, way, way down some rabbit holes there. So a relation
Yeah,
to the actress Emily Blunt.
that's right. He's uncle of Emily Blunt. And Emily Blunt and her family, is it John? I forget his surname now. It begins with K. They were front and center in the 2020 pushing the agenda
Yeah.
um, as actors, both actors. pushing the agenda, telling us we need to be locked down, telling us how their family were coping with all the terrible effects of this deadly bat flu thing that were going around.
Yeah. Well, this is, I mean, there's so much, and we might do it in a more orderly way, I guess, but there's just so many interesting connections that you give to, well, I don't know who was it that popularized Nobody's Dad as a plumber. Is that
That
Mark
was Mark
Devlin?
Devlin. Mark
Okay.
Devlin,
Yeah.
yes, yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah.
and
Mark
it's
Devlin.
so true. You
It
look
is.
at these people and they're, royalty and, uh,
Yeah, there is not a single plumber mentioned in this entire 500-page book. It's
No.
it's
As, as
outrageous.
try as try as I might try, Mark Devlin, I couldn't find one at all. We did actually find one. I forget an actor. His dad was he was sort of a plumber. I think he was a plasterer, but started out as a plumber. Major actor. I forget. It wasn't Ranulph Fiennes, obviously, but it was that type of character. But yeah, it's interesting. See, a lot of people say to me that the bloodlines don't mean anything, but
Mhm.
that can't be true because a friend of mine, she does a lot of genealogy research for her friends, putting the family trees together. And I asked her, obviously we call it amateur, but it's more than amateur that she does. Lorraine, if you're listening, have you ever found any of your friends with royal bloodlines? She said no. Yet we can pick up these people and find royal bloodlines. And I'm sure other people have got royal bloodlines. So it's not just about the bloodline, but it's
Mhm.
an important piece of evidence. Is that
Well, that's one neat thing that you do at the end of many of the chapters is you just show, oh, and by the way, I'm going to give you the royal bloodlines. And then you go back and back and back, and it's just astonishing.
well, if you saw some of my little data files that I've got literally hundreds that I've done of people, famous people, bloodlines, which might be another book in its own right, showing the bloodlines of individual people, and then what NGOs they're linked to. That would be a book in its own right, without
Yeah.
the pandemic and what have you. So that maybe something that I move on to. One interesting thing, I don't know if I put this in here, but a lot of these people are linked to serial killers and assassins as well by blood. So I found that we did a presentation of some of the research I'd done called Assassin's Creed, and I think it's on the YouTube
I,
channel.
yeah, I think I saw that one. Yeah. That
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
So a lot of these people are linked to, like Taylor Swift, for instance, is a cousin of Jeffrey Dahmer. Now, am I saying that Taylor Swift's a serial killer? No, but what we're seeing is maybe they've been chosen because they've got similar sort of narcissistic or psychological traits, let's call it.
Well, that's one of, before we dive into that, but let's make a note of that because there is a place I highlighted where you talk about the quality, the mental makeup of a lot of the people that are presented to us as, again, I'm not sure if it's your term or borrowed, but the lifetime actors. I think that came from maybe Mark Devlin as well, lifetime
Yeah, I think
actor.
Mark heard it from some other guys that he used to listen to, but I credit Mark because I heard it from Mark, but he says it's from two other guys he listened to. But yeah,
But
it's a good
that's
term.
the people that are put up. I made a comment on the Redux that went up just the last Sunday that these people, I was particularly singling out Peter Thiel, but these are not people like we think of people. They're not real. We don't really think that Elon Musk and Peter Thiel just said, "Oh, hey, let's do PayPal." Like that's just not how it happens. But yeah, you've got a really good breakdown of the psychology, and so much of your own thesis here is that these people have been traumatized in, kind of MK Ultra fashion by the way that they were raised, even bred, and certainly the public schooling system and the abuse that is systemic.
Mm. I mean, Boris Johnson's a prime example of that exact. Well, he's a prime example. He obviously went to Ashdown House, it was called, public school. Tony Blair's another one. He went to two schools that he was surrounded by people that have been, since he's left that school, have been accused, or even more than accused, actually sentenced to for abusing children while he was there. And one of them was his mentor. There's no getting away from this. And one of the things Boris Johnson talked about was being beaten with a cricket bat, a golf iron, the cane, a jockery bat, which is like a small rounder's bat. And this was on a daily basis. And it's not just my sort of evidence digging up. He's actually said that in his blogs, which is now, by the way, his website's been turned off now. And I don't... so since I've logged all this stuff, he's actually turned the website off. Now, I'm not saying it's down to me writing this book, but it's been up since the early 2000s, this blog website. He's been writing stuff in there since before he was mayor.
Oh,
It's really interesting because like Boris Johnson's a great example, and you focus a lot in the book about his dad. You talk about his dad, and I find Stanley Johnson to be also extremely interesting. I've got a couple of his books. One of them's literally called Life Without Birth.
Yeah.
And there's no copies of it available online. I grabbed it a while ago. There's another one called The Green Revolution, where on the inside dust of the dust jacket, he says we need some humane population control, so revealing what's really underneath that environmentalist movement. But the thing is, they have so many children themselves. And then I wonder if this partially ties into this kind of traumatic upbringing, because they can't just have one child and assume that they're going to get it right, and this one's going to go on to fulfill all the roles that they have planned for him, right? So they might need to have 5, 6 children, and then see the temperament and see how they're developing and start putting them through their paces, and then okay, this one's going to become the prime minister for the big sea event in 2020 that we have planned. So I think that's why they're not practicing what they preach. They never sign up to go into the euthanasia pod first, and lead by example. Just like when they send people to war, they're never on the front lines, sort of carrying the bombs and the guns themselves, right? So what's really amazing to me that you've captured in this book that blows my mind. I mean, I haven't finished reading it all yet. And I actually had to refrain from going off on tangents of research to confirm. I'm like, I just gotta read as much of this as I can. I'm just gonna give you the benefit of the doubt. I'll go and fact check you later. But but everything right. it aligns with everything I've read and all the books that I've sort of covered on my channel and conversations I've had with Melissa and research that I've listened to and taken in over the last few years. So I have no reason to doubt any of it. But one of the most mind-blowing aspects is just how like interlocked and interlinked it all is. So you've got the serial killers that you mentioned, but they're connected with the media people, who are connected with the military people, who are connected with the political class, who are connected with the scientific people, who are connected with the bankers. And it's just like, it actually is just one club.
Yeah. It blows my mind as well. And also, this isn't a book of, say, ego. This isn't me saying I know everything. I don't know you guys know that because obviously I spoke to you before, Melissa. But what this is it fries my head as much as everybody else's, that this is actually real. I mean, Alan was talking about this 20, 30, whatever years ago, in his podcasts, I suppose the early podcast radio presentations back then. But this is sort of proof that it happens. And going on what Nick said there, that don't run away and research. I mean, I agree with what he said. Just read it, give the benefit of doubt, and then do some research. That's fine. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't matter if I've got one or two things wrong. We can always tweak these things. Or then I didn't try and put my opinion in there. It was all fact-based evidence, if you like, or the truth, if you want. What we've been told is the truth anyway.
Well, your thread that you carry throughout the whole book, you set up in the prologue, you wrote, there is plenty of evidence of extreme childhood/adult trauma, possible physical, sexual, psychological, and financial, and these individuals then go on to have narcissistic and or psychotic tendencies. You talk a bit about nepotism, and then you get to the breakdown of what we see. And this is, you really nail it, I think, right here. This is like a little index card to keep up in front of us as to who these people are and have been down through history. Eugenics and transhuman ideologies seem to run in the family. Links to the intelligence community, numerology, and you wrote, although this is not my specialty, certain numbers seem to attach themselves to these individuals and families. Ties to secret societies or Masonic memberships, royal, ancient, or elite bloodlines. And that's the index card. That's it right there. And you bring the receipts.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, Boris Johnson. The irony is his dad worked for John D. Rockefeller directly, the third, John D. Rockefeller the third, directly on population control. So then when Nick's talking about the books that he's written and what have you, it's right there in front of us. And he worked at the EU on population control. So he's been given an order from John D. Rockefeller to follow this through. And he's written books about it. And then Boris has talked about it in his blogs, which I fortunately got copies of. And he's written about it in his articles for the Daily Mail as well, about how much better the world would be with less people. Yeah, he's got 8 children. I think his dad's got 7. And these people can tell us one thing. The strange thing is that the public sucks it up. The public says, oh, he's got 8, but he wants less people. Yeah, I agree with him. It's, that's the insanity that we're actually living through, that the people actually agree with idiots like Boris Johnson.
Well, and another thing as well is that we have, I'm sure, been banging this drum. We've talked about it to people. We've talked about it publicly, the three of us here, probably, I guess, to people that we know, in 3D world as well. And crazy conspiracy theorist, you're just negative, that would never happen. They would never do that. The other day, last week, it was announced on the radio that the number of babies born in England and Wales is the lowest it's been for 50 years. And a third of the babies that were born were to mothers that were not born in England and Wales. And that's casually announced on the radio. And I was with a couple of colleagues, work colleagues who I don't talk to about any of this kind of stuff. And I was thinking, I bet I could have told them all this yesterday and they would have thought I was insane. And they would have heard headline on the radio and not connected the two things. Because this is like the level of mind control, the level of conditioning that's gone in. And, it's not real if it's not on the radio. Oh, it is on the radio, but it's not, but it's actually a good thing. There's those stages, isn't there, of like the first they tell you it's not happening, then they admit it is happening and it's actually a good thing. And, and here's why we should be glad.
Let me ask you a question. Did your coworkers comment on it? You all heard it at the same time? What did they say, if anything?
One didn't, said nothing. And the other one said, oh, I guess, people back then were just a bit more like go-getting than we are nowadays. Something like that. That was just like, and we're all parents, we all have children. I know the other two gentlemen with me have children as well. And I was sitting in the back of the car, just, do I take this moment to say something? I thought it's probably not worth it. We got a meeting to go to and, business stuff to do. And I thought it's probably not worth it. I'll just enjoy the aircon and the sunny day and talk about it on the podcast
Boris
later.
Johnson, a couple of weeks ago, I didn't have this in the book because a couple of weeks ago, I've got the headline here in front of me. Boris Johnson, he's wrote this in the Daily Mail. Boris Johnson, falling birth rates aren't a disaster. They're the best bit of global news in a long time. In the hilltop villages of Tuscany, where I was recently, obviously on holiday, the bells are tolling for far more funerals than weddings. So he's still, even now, telling us what's happening. He's telling us the plan. He's part of that. I'm not saying he's the controller of all this. He's probably an upper echelon manager, but he's still pushing John D. Rockefeller's population control plan today. And he was in control of obviously the rollout of the jabs.
Yeah.
Let me at that point then, if it's all right, could I read a quote from the book? Would that be all right with you, Dom?
Yeah.
All right, let me see if I can find it here. So there's a bit about So this is page 184, and I think this is really excellent. And you mentioned earlier, just to circle back to something you said, which you tried not to put your opinion in here, which you did a commendable job, but it did get in here every now and again.
Yeah,
And
well,
Melissa and
you.
I, Melissa and I were talking about how to do this interview, and we were like, "Do you know what? Maybe we'll focus on the bits where he does put his opinion in there, and he lets loose, and he lets us know what he thinks." And this is one of those bits, right? I don't like using the word elite to describe these people who are seemingly placed in charge because there are too many different meanings. It's another overused inserted spell used to confuse us all. The political elite, the intellectual elite, the ruling elite, the sporting elite, or the military elite. It can describe anyone who is better at something or who has more of something, even if it's perceived. They're elite because the news told you they are, so they must be. But even they don't really run the world. The Johnsons are the NWO middle management at best, and the Rockefellers are probably the upper middle management. Bill Gates is another manager. In dictionaries, the word elite has several different meanings. Quote, a select group that is superior in terms of ability or qualities to the rest of a group or society. Or, quote, the richest, most powerful, best educated, or best trained group in a society. Also, the word elite assumes that they're in control and they know what they're doing is righteous for humanity, which is an obvious lie. So it begs the question, are these people and families tagged at birth to be processed as in a professional sports academy? It certainly seems that way, but in this case, the children are picked prior to birth and have to go through all the right training and initiations and have the right biological criteria, bloodlines, childhood trauma, generational memberships of secret societies, and mind control. After all this training, out pops a candidate from the psycho cookie cutter conveyor belt to continue the work of the deranged nutters before them. Not all make the grade, but these people are placed in positions of power and appear on TV in films, music, politics, academia, religion, law, military, intelligence, police, health, or finance, to name but a few. And then you go on as well, just on the next page, to talk about Boris Johnson and how his whole life seems to have been choreographed, scripted, filmed, and recorded from a very young age to his first jobs and throughout his entire career. A little like the film The Truman Show, you
Hmm.
know. Yeah, it's in a nutshell, I think what is happening, and this is what people can take away. And I feel like this book is so good that I would give it to anybody who's like, where do I start? Somebody who's just started to ask questions, I'd be like, read Traitors and then just go wherever your curiosity takes you, because you'll know so many of the names in there, and there's so many threads that you can pull on. And then it's about when you can get people started, then they can start following their curiosity and go wherever their interest leads. So I think you did a really excellent job there of summing it up in a nutshell.
Well, thanks, because that was one of my aims. I thought, well, it needs to cater for people like yourselves who have been into this for a long time and read plenty of books and watched plenty of stuff and done research of your own. But it also needs to be easily followed by someone who doesn't, maybe new to the game. Or, for instance, my father-in-law's reading it, and it just spoke to me now and said, I can't believe the amount of work you've put in to find all this information out. Yeah. And so he's not over the fence like we are, but he didn't get jabbed in 2020, so he knew there was a scam going down, and that's why I've used Wikipedia a lot in the source notes. Not because I were lazy, but because I want people to realise it's there in front of you in the
Hmm.
mainstream. Yeah, if you want to connect the dots, if you like.
Yeah, that's great. Some of my live streams, I would do an intro before I would read or talk about whatever book was on the menu. And I would often use Wikipedia for that exact reason. I was like, it is right there. All you have to do is turn your head and look at it. Turn off the
Yeah,
Netflix and the computer games and the sports balls and go and just read some publicly available information because, like H.G. Wells called it, the open conspiracy in his book back in the 20s. That is exactly what it is. This is open. It's right out there. We might not know the real ins and outs of their early childhood and the processes and procedures they go through, even though there is some of that out there as well. But just knowing their business links, their interests, their salaries, you're talking about numerology. There's a part in here where you talked about I forget his first name. Is it Zahawi?
Yeah, Zahawi, Nadeem Zahawi. Yeah,
Nadeem Zahawi, and how he worked for an organization that gave him a monthly salary of £3,333. Hmm.
it's there written down.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
Speaking, oh, go ahead.
it's okay. It's okay.
Well,
Yeah.
obviously, I mean, so far I don't find anything, not that I went looking for, to disprove you and say, oh no, that's not right. But I did read carefully, and maybe I shouldn't say this publicly, and I don't want you to get upset, but there's a
I don't get
typo.
upset.
Okay, I found a typo.
I know there will be.
Yeah.
We've got.
You're writing about Nadim Zahawi
Yeah,
and how he goes on the Good Morning Britain show with, and you wrote Piers Moron, but it's Piers Morgan.
I know. Sadly, I got it wrong.
No, you do
Yeah.
that. You do that throughout, and it made me laugh so hard. You give people like it's not Rishi Sunak. He's a slum dog.
Yeah, Slumdog Millionaire. Yeah.
Dom, I
When I
gotta
see
say,
Rishi
while we're on this
Sunak,
topic, I've got
yeah.
to say though, every single time this one gives me a giggle. Savage Jabhead.
Yes.
Yeah,
Every
Savage
time,
Jabhead.
like I just when it pops in my head, it just gives me a little warm fuzzy feel. I'm like, that is one of the
Yeah.
best ones ever.
That was
Yeah.
Chris called him Savage Jabhead. Yeah.
Oh. Well, I loved Piers Moron because it was so perfect. As I was reading it, I stopped for a moment and thought, that's not his last name, is it?
I try to do it seamlessly so it just flows. And as we would do the presentations, where it's dark material. This, I mean, the Tony Blair
Yeah.
chapters. I don't know if you've got to them yet, but the Tony Blair chapters are dark chapters.
Yes, yes.
Some of them were difficult to write, and not in because the writing was difficult, but just to write about. They were. I actually felt sorry for a lot of these people as children,
Yeah.
because a lot of these people didn't ask to be dealt with this way and put in these situations. Now, as I mentioned, it does turn them out a certain way, though. Like Boris Johnson, you can tell he doesn't care about anybody else. He's got no. There were a breakdown of a psychiatrist doing his mental breakdown. He said he's a psychotic narcissist. That's what he actually said. I forget the guy's name. It was called Dr. Showham or something like that. He actually said he was a psychotic narcissist. And he was our prime minister.
Yes, and if you look, we were talking about his father, Stanley, and what another heartbreaker there is Boris Johnson's mother, Stanley's first wife. I mean, it is so tragic, and she ends up with a broken nose.
Mhm.
And Stanley Johnson's excuse was he was just flailing around, and the nose got in the way, which,
Yeah.
That's not how she tells the story.
Well, the actual hospitals that she was put in were a lot of the British arm of the MK Ultra operation that Dr. William Sargent was running. So he was in and out of a lot of these. He was linked to Dr. Asher, Richard Asher, Jane Asher's father,
Hmm.
who was also in the 60s. Paul McCartney was living in that house, which again, I've obviously not written about in this book, but these are all interesting spin-offs where, so the Maudsley Hospital was funded by the Rockefellers, I do believe, if memory serves me right. I think it was funded by the Rockefellers, and a lot of the Nazi doctors in the 1930s came over, and there was like an exchanges of doctors going to Germany as well. So a lot of that research that was being done, apparently the Nazis were bad people, but they were allowed to come into Britain in the 30s to train some of our psychiatrists or work with our psychiatrists.
Didn't Boris Johnson go to that hospital as well when he was supposedly struck down with the big C? Wasn't
He went to
like
St. Thomas's. He went down during 2020. I think it was March, April 2020. He was coincidentally went down with we called it 91 Divok in our podcast, so we didn't get turned off. A Divok is a parasite, a spiritual parasite, and he was struck down. But when he came out, it looked odd. It looked like he'd seen the gates of hell. But St. Thomas's was one of the main hospitals where the UK arm of MK Ultra, run by Dr. William Sargent, was run out from. That was in the 50s and 60s. He had a room called, I think it was called the sleep room, where he put
Hmm.
mainly women to
Hmm.
sleep for months at a time when they had psychological issues or supposed psychological issues.
An associate of you and Cameron. And
He was.
yeah.
In fact, some say Sargent was Ewan Cameron's mentor. He taught him how to hypnotize people,
Yeah.
and wrote papers on it. And so did
And this
Dr.
is
Asher. He wrote
this is his book, right? Battle
that's the
for the
book, yeah.
Mind.
That's the one, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
William
Battle for the
Sargent.
Mind. Yeah.
1957, published by Pan Books.
Yeah.
Amazing, eh? It's a giveaway, isn't it? Also, in that book there, I think it's that book or one of the other ones, there is a picture of a screaming Beatle fan. And underneath the picture, it says Beatle Possession.
Hmm. Hmm.
If
I
it's that
think
same book.
I think you show that in one of your talks.
Yeah. And so they were again, we're just going off script here a little bit, but they were working on possessing people via music
Hmm.
in the 50s, and then they brought it into obviously the Beatles music, where the screaming fans, which was quite a famous part of the Beatles
Hmm.
backdrop, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But if they're doing that to Beatle fans, they could do that to MPs, CEOs, judges, all the other people that we speak about. All of them went to these public schools. I think there's a guy called Tim Renton. I think I mentioned him in the book.
Hmm.
He said that 75% of all prime ministers, I think, went to boarding school. It's quite a profound statement. But if you dig a little bit deeper, you could say 75% of police commissioners, judges, top lawyers, whatever, MPs, all went to these schools as well.
Hmm.
So we're actually John Lennon was right. We were being run by psychos.
Hmm.
The world is being run by psychos.
Is it okay if I read your dedication to the book?
You can do, yeah. Yeah.
So this book is dedicated to people here in the UK and around the world who suffered mental trauma and physical abuse during the ritualistic talking to Dom or Chris and Sheep Farm. You're going to have a lot of laughs, but it's a very serious book about what we lived through, which is a horror show. And I
That
want to.
that sorry, that dedication there. I went away on holiday and I was told a friend of mine had passed away. Well, a friend of the family's anyway. And my son goes to school with his son. And I remember when they first started secondary school, I was talking to him on the rugby field and he said, "What do you do?" And I thought, "Oh, no, I'm sure you guys get this, people. What do you do?" And I said, "I've got a podcast and I can, do into what you class as conspiracy." And we started talking about 2020. And he said, "I regret having those." 3 years later, he'd passed away.
Oh.
Yeah. And that really gave me a kick up the arse to finish this. So that I didn't put his name in there because his family doesn't think all this is what I talk about is real or linked. So it's unfair to link them to that. But and I'm not saying it was, but he passed away within 6 months, 7 months, 8 months, something like that. Fit young guy, younger than me, 10 years younger than me, probably. No, he'd just gone 50, actually. And passed away within it. And it was really sad because we loved the bloke. But that is what these narcissistic psychos have done. And when we're saying that there's less people being born now, it's because they're taking out of the world these people. And around the world, not just in this country.
I was just going to, while I'm here looking at the index, just going to talk about the three parts of the book, just in broad strokes. The first part is Boris Johnson, a made man. And there are quite a few chapters. I don't know, 15 chapters. Yeah. And you cover it so thoroughly, but for people who are going to read the book, it's not just Boris, but because you've got connections and bloodlines and companies, and it's a fascinating history that you walk us through. Then you get to part two, which is the COVID cabinet, and that's 2020 to 2022. And these are who are the key people. And the one of the key people that you focus on is Nadim Zahawi. And sorry if I slaughtered that, not being in the UK and hearing it every day. But I mean, what a piece of work this guy is. And all of the people around him and in what you call the COVID cabinet there, including Rishi Sunak. And then the third section is Blair, the early years, 1953 to 1997. And there's an amazing, just massive hunk of history there about, I guess you could say, how did the UK get where they were in 2020? Well, here's the setup.
Yeah, Blair is he's still wheeled out, isn't he? Unlike any other British Prime Minister.
Mm-hmm.
There's no one in modern history anyway. They didn't wheel Margaret Thatcher out, John Major out, although they still have prominent roles. Gordon Brown, Cameron, Blair, he's constantly wheeled out as, I don't know, peace envoy, whatever. He was wheeled out in 2020 to tell everybody about getting IDs and all this other stuff. He's still being wheeled out. I think his son got a 300. His business is, to him, it's worth 300 million or something like that. Blair's, Ewan Blair's business. He's had a lot of investment in from, I think it's we'll call it the country state in the Middle East, should we say, that seems to be cause a lot of trouble, but claim victim a lot of the times. I think we know what we're talking
wasn't
about.
Blair just recently rolled out to tell us that, oh, the climate thing is not all what we were telling you it was, and actually you can ignore all that stuff because we need to use all this energy for the data centers that we're building.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's because he's being backed by Larry Ellison, the Oracle guy. Larry Ellison's given his foundation tens of millions of pounds.
Yep.
Boris Johnson's linked into Larry Ellison because his father-in-law, his new wife, Carrie Johnson, her father was the managing director or the CEO of the Larry Ellison Foundation.
Yeah.
And they also work for, her brother and him work for an arms company. I mean, all this is so intertwined. So Larry Ellison gets a mention a few times. I mean, everybody knows that his business was set up by the CIA to start with. So, yeah.
But then there's even like one thing I learned, page 250 was about Hewlett Packard and its links to Trilateral Commission and population management. And there's a great section there about Stanford University and its connections with Silicon Valley. And you say as much as Silicon Valley wouldn't exist if it wasn't for that pipeline of people, coming through the university. So again, that the network, the interconnectedness is impossible to deny. That's why I think this book would be such a good primer for somebody who wants to know. Because I've been out and people have said to me, what's the one book I should read? If I'm not into this stuff, what's the one book I should read? And I'm always like, what makes you think there's one book? I've got like 800 here.
yeah.
And this is like
a bookshelf like yours. Yeah.
I've got a list with another 800 on it of books that I want to get for things that I don't have yet, but I could say this is so accessible to the average person because there's so many handles of names and places and people and organizations and groups that they're already aware of, that I could say, this is the place to start. This is where you start, Mr. Normie, who's never looked into any of this stuff before. Check this out. And I've been reading it on trains as I've been commuting to and from work and kind of like hoping that people are looking at it and taking note of the cover, just holding it up to see if most people are just buried in their laptops and smartphones, I'm sorry to say, but...
Yeah. But the intrinsic family links to either it's the intelligence agencies, like Carrie Johnson's grandmother worked with Dennis Ely, and I forget the guy's name now, but they were all part of intelligence. I think it was a Ministry of Information she worked for, Anne Simmons. And so this is Carrie Johnson's grandmother. And she's now Boris Johnson's wife. I think they've got 3 kids now, even though he's into population control. And yeah, she's talking about I think the John Warboys case as well now. She was the only one that spoke out about it, the taxi driver who was apparently drugging women in the back of his taxi. Quite a big case going back into the 2000s. She was apparently drugged in the back of the taxi, but she's the only one that escaped. She can't remember how she got home or anything like that. But she's only recently just come out about, not recently come out about it, but she started talking about it again. So she's been used for a lot of different publicity stunts, if you like, about saving whales from Japanese trawlers. Yeah,
you had a lot of funny things to say too on that section where you're, just giving the, I don't know, hypocrisy. Is that a good word there of someone with her causes? She also trained to be an actress.
yes,
Didn't make a go of that profession, and so
yeah. So, and again, that's another link. A lot of these people are trained actors. I mean, Boris Johnson used to act in plays. A lot of these people are trained actors, and hence the lifetime actor mantle that Mark talks about in his books and talks. Because
you also mentioned as well that what does a government and parliament do? They pass acts. You know,
it's right in front of you, isn't it?
and then it's the theater of war, isn't it? Where you
yes
you do battle against the bad guys over there in that other place, and so the words give away so much, and that's one thing that you do here that I think resonates and chimes really well with Alan's work. For example, is you you'll write certain words in a way with capitalization. For like the classic one is on the sign behind you, believe, with the word lie in the middle there. Don't believe something.
Yeah.
And you do that throughout here as well, which is another really good way to help people see when they're not seeing, is like, why do we call it a theater of war? Why do government pass acts? And you even break down the word government itself, meaning ment comes from the Latin for mind, and govern is to control. So the word government means mind control, right?
And all these words are right in front of us, and they've been put there for a reason. It's not, we just take them for granted now. We just say that, the government, it's just to run the country. And no, it's to mind controllers, as was proven why people were banging pots and pans on a Thursday night, at 8:00 around the world.
I'm not going to repeat what you said about those people because I don't know if
might be
my mum
disparaging.
might listen to this, but
yeah.
but that's one thing I will say is that as soon as I started reading this, I hadn't even made it through the prefaces, the forewords, and I just had your voice in my head. You've written
that
it
might not be good.
In the same. No, it was good. It was good. It was good because especially in this era, this age of AI, and you see everybody churning out these long articles and all this text, we're bombarded with it now, and it's soulless. There is no creative human spark behind it. It's just AI slop. That's the word for it. And this is the absolute antithesis of that. There is so much soul, personality, heart, care, love that you've put into this project, and it's a pleasure to read it, even though it's so information dense, and it's a lot to take in. And I probably, I didn't know, I would say, I don't know, 80, 85, 90% of the information in this book, and I've probably forgotten most of that already, just through the first reading. But like Melissa was saying, it's here now.
Yeah, but so have I, because you move on. And I mentioned before, I moved on. I'm doing other research now. So this research was started 6 years ago, and so when you move on, you do forget some of it until you have to go back through it if you're doing a presentation or something. So, and this isn't sort of information that I already knew. I had to find it myself. So it was new to me 2 years ago, if you like. And so I went through that wet fish slap round the face 2 years ago with that information when you put it together. But I like that part of it. And I know a lot of people say, how do you sleep at night knowing that all this is going on? But I find it fascinating. And I'm fortunate to have Chris, because he finds it fascinating as well, because it is dark subject matter. But I, as an observer, that's what we are. I find it fascinating that the world's run this way, because what it says to me is that there's a bigger thing at play. That it means that we're actually meaningless, because I don't know whether I mentioned it in the book, actually. Is this kind of some kind of biological AI that automatically is programmed into us that overrides this narcissistic psychobabble that we have to put up with, you know, and we just rise to the top. So there is a positive element to this, even though we're in this trauma basing constantly where everything's traumatic, but there's something inside us that, or inside some of us that just push through it.
Well, that you made such a good point. I had a friend who's not into this sort of research at all. A longtime friend, we've been friends 20 years or something, recently reconnected, and she started asking me some questions, and I'm telling her different things, and she's like, Sam, how do you sleep at night knowing all this stuff? You know, you've got children, and I'm like, the thing is that we're always told that humans are the problem. This is the central lie. It's like, there's too many humans. Humans are the problem. It's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. It's not actually humans. It's actually this very tiny, what Alan called the dominant minority of psychopathic, long-term planning, intelligent, crazy individual. Like, it's a small, 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 tiny group. Most humans are decent, caring. They want to work, provide for their family, build relationships, play some games, have some fun, relax, and enjoy life, enjoy reality, enjoy creation, the simulation, you know, whatever your worldview is. That's most of us. But there's so much energy and effort and time poured into manipulating us and controlling our behavior by this tiny, tiny group who are trying to shape us in their image. And that's the good news to me, is like, they wouldn't be putting so much effort, energy, and time and resources into the systems that they build, these convoluted, confusing, overwhelming, dominant systems, if we didn't have intrinsic worth and value and power and an ability to have influence. You see, I mean, if we were so easy to control, it wouldn't be a case of having to make everything so like confusing and what is the term? Full spectrum dominance.
I mean, look how much effort we'll use 2020 as an example. They put in to shut people like us up. Look how much time, effort, and money was spent I read an article that they knew no matter what happened I think it was about 3 to 5% of the population would never go along with, even if they were dragging you out of your house, would never go along with it. Never. So although maybe a bigger amount of people didn't end up getting the jab or going along with the stuff, they knew there was a hardcore set of people that would basically prefer to die than say yes. They're the ones they're scared of. They're the ones they fear. Because like the French resistance, people joined together during the 1940s to fight the Germans. And this happened after 2020, 2021, 2022, after those marches. Then there was a lot of infighting after World War II. The communists were fighting the far right, and a lot of other people that weren't even political, that were just fighting the Nazis, who were part of the resistance, then they were fighting each other. So there were a lot of infighting because all of a sudden they didn't agree on anything. They had one set aim and they didn't agree on anything. And that's how easy it is to split up a great unit, if you like, of humans. But I agree. We have got some great traits, and they're scared of that 5% or whatever it is. I think it was the Nudge unit that came up with that figure, 3 to 5%.
Okay.
I read, which they're. I don't know if you know this, but in 2020, 2021, 2022, we did other podcasts. So this information is based on the podcast we did about the politicians. Yeah, the research that I did on them, me, Chris presented. I've also got probably more information on the medical experts and the media that we did as well, which probably be book 2 when I get around. I've already started most of it, so a lot of it were because I was trying to put it into this one. I was trying to do but it as you said, there's 500 pages without the notes. It'd have been about 1,000 pages. It'd been far too big.
I think a second book is probably wise.
Yeah, well, there's also a third one about the World Economic Forum that I did. I don't know how many hours of episodes in the World Economic Forum and all their backgrounds. Yeah.
I can't wait for those because one of the things, like you just mentioned, the effort that went into silencing people, deplatforming them, canceling them, stopping them talking about these things. That's what I didn't really I had before 2020, I had about 20 or so sci-fi novels, and that was it. And then when I started seeing all the censorship, I'm thinking, how far is this going to go? Where are they going to take this? I might not be able to watch the Corbett Report or the Last American Vagabond or Mark Devlin. Mark Devlin, actually,
Yeah.
his trilogy of books were some of the first ones I got. And the first one I reviewed on the channel, on my channel, was Mark Devlin's Musical Truth Volume 1. I got the trilogy from him and signed as well, you know.
Right.
And because I started to realize if this censorship goes so far, I can't access information online. I'm going to get these books. I'm going to collect them and build up this library so that I have something physical, tangible that I can point to, that I can refer to, you know. And so yeah, the more books we can bring into the world on these topics, and the more you can preserve them in a physical form that can be passed around and annotated and looked at and read and checked, the better. I think that's a real good act of resistance because now we're in the age of AI, algorithmic censorship and control of our feeds and the information we see. And I don't see that stopping anytime soon.
No.
People are
No.
just embracing it and barreling into it full steam ahead. And the people who sit and read long form are just going to be fewer and fewer and fewer. But I think that will have a kind of a rebound effect where people will get so sick and tired of all this AI slop that they'll go, do you know what? I need to start reading books again.
Yeah. And just
So
on
that's
a
what I'm
couple of
hoping.
points there, when he said
Yeah.
that obviously the book when I've written it and researched it, there's no like AI and there isn't. That was purposeful. I couldn't have done it any other way. Because and I do believe AI probably has its uses, okay? Because it's going to be used. When I was younger, we were in telecoms. Whether we like it or not, this technology's come in whether we like it or not. And if you look at the resistance fighters in Gaza or Lebanon, they're utilizing the enemy's technical weaponry back against, they call it return to sender, back against the Israelis. And using their technology, which we are today, using Zoom, is, again, using their technology back on themselves. This was obviously printed on Amazon. I mean, Jeff Bezos and his father and his grandfather, etc. His grandfather was set up DARPA. Jeff Bezos's grandfather. He was the first director of DARPA. So I think it was called Lawrence.
Was that back when it was ARPA and they brought
He
out the
worked for.
ARPANET?
He initially worked for the American Atomic Energy Authority. So he was a director of that, and then he worked for ARPA, and he was one of the first directors of ARPA, and then he was there while they set up ARPANET, and so Lawrence Gaines. No, I've got that. No, anyway, I'm gonna have to look his name up now. Sorry.
While you're doing that, I'll just mention this book. I always plug it, but Surveillance Valley by Asher Levine. Oh, I just realized it's pretty rude to plug someone else's book when we're talking to you about yours.
No,
Sorry
do
about
it.
that. But but this is a
Not
really,
rude at
really
all.
good one. It covers ARPANET, covers like basically it was a not counterinsurgency technology. It was they were testing it out in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Vietnam, these kinds of places, and then they brought it back over here. And then once it was up and running, they handed it over to a lot of private companies to control. But that's a really important history people need to know about. Did you find the name?
Mhm. Yeah, Lawrence Guise, he was called. Gise. Lawrence Guise. Yeah, he worked for the US Atomic Energy Commission, and then he worked for the Advanced Research Project Agency, which is ARPA. They set up ARPANET, the first internet. In 1958, he started working for them, and then he ended up being a director of DARPA as well, among other stuff.
Wow.
And that's Jeff Bezos's organic online business. He just set it up in his garage. What a garage is about.
There's something that I wanted you to get into just in terms of how we're shaped, how our minds are shaped around these people, things like that, foundation myths around people who were told, oh, they just did it in their garage. But you showed the connection there between Zahawi and YouGov.
Hmm.
And just the name YouGov is set up to sound like it's something from the government. Maybe it's the government polling you or asking you questions, but it's so he and a partner, and this is an Archer protege.
Yeah.
Um, they set up YouGov, which is a data mining polling business. And then you tie in YouGov to several other things, which just have the function of not really polling what you think, but shaping how you think. And I don't know if you've
Yeah.
got any, yeah.
I mean, did I dig very deep? I mean, I could have gone into pages and pages on YouGov, their contracts with the government. They work for the government, but they're not part of the government. It's one of these quasi type corporations. It isn't an NGO. It's listed on the London Stock Exchange. But the three people that were listed as the main directors had never run a listed business before. Even the CEO, the chairman, I forget his name now, but he was, I think, ex-BBC, had nothing to do with any of this type of business. From my research, he'd never even run that type of business. He was even on, I think it was the intelligence services watch list as being a communist spy in the 80s. And yet all of a sudden he rises to the top and manages these two characters that were both Archer proteges, as you say, Melissa. Nadeem Zahawi, who was known as Archer's lemon curd, because he's from Kurdistan, and a guy called Stephen Kowalski, who changed his name to Shakespeare. Stephen Shakespeare took his wife's maiden name, and he's intertwined his different names for several different types of work, if you like. But Stephen Kowalski's dad was a press liaison officer after World War II. So he used to go into East Berlin as a German. I think he was Polish, actually. But he, as a British liaison officer working with the British Army, and come back with information about East Berlin. And it was well known that both of the East Germans used to do it, press liaison officers, and they were all spies, basically. They were spying on each other. And they were using these press liaison officers as go-betweens or conduits. And Stephen Kowalski ends up at this public school in Britain, in Cold War Germany, with no evidence of how they're paying for this boarding school. But then when you go into detail, there's quite a lot of intelligence officers that come out of this boarding school. And that's the background that a lot of these people seem to have, is that they're from an intelligence background, but end up being CEOs of a major company on the stock market. And I'm not saying Stephen Kowalski is an intelligence officer. I found no evidence of that, or Stephen Shakespeare, whatever it's called. But they were certainly front and center doing the data polling or asking questions to people about 2020 and the lockdowns and things like that.
You said on page 212, these companies are funded until they succeed, like Amazon, Google, and Facebook, and to a lesser extent, YouGov, simply because the NWO needs them to succeed to fulfill whatever generational plan is in operation. That's very well
seems
said.
quite obvious to me, does that? Because Amazon was losing hundreds of millions, not just a few quid. Any other, I mean, I've been in business quite a long time, and I've seen businesses funded 3 or 4 years, and they close them down if they're not doing what they need to be doing. Don't hit the targets and all that type of stuff. But yet these are funded for decades before they actually look at Tesla, Elon Musk's Tesla. I don't even think that's ever earned a profit, and yet it's worth $1 trillion apparently. How does that work?
Isn't there a similar thing going on with these, genetic testing kits that give you your ancestry, 23andMe type outfits as well?
Yeah, well, the founder of the 23andMe, she's the ex-wife of one of the Google guys.
Mm-hmm.
And they
Sergey Brin, yeah.
Sergey Brin, yeah. And they actually marketed 23andMe as the Google of genetic testing. I think it was somewhere. I did that was part of the World Economic Forum stuff, actually. I did a presentation called Revenge of the Nerds. And it was all about the tech guys that were brought through the Young Global Leader program. That's another connection as well. A lot of these people we talk about all went through the Young Global Leader program. which is sort of like a modern day Nazi youth.
Which was itself the name was changed, right? Was it
That's
originally
right,
they're
yeah.
going to be the global leaders and then they became something
The
else
global
less?
leaders of for tomorrow or something like that. Tony Blair was the global leaders for tomorrow in 1993. So was Bono as well.
Is it?
And that's
Oh,
sorry,
go
go on,
ahead.
Melissa.
Well, I was going to read just a little bit more. This is right around YouGov, just to show if that's okay, just to show connections to how our opinions are formed. It's fascinating here. So this is YouGov. It's partnered with Imperial College London. Supposedly, this is just a opinion poll, but it's actually, as you write here, mass mental manipulation. And you quoted the ICL website about YouGov. We're tracking how people across the world are responding to the coronavirus pandemic. Our global survey, launched in partnership with YouGov the first week of April, is collecting fortnightly data from 29 countries to explore the public's attitudes and health behaviors as the situation evolves. Through this survey, we're monitoring how compliant individuals are with COVID-19 safety measures, such as self-isolation and avoiding unnecessary travel. We're also looking into a range of other relevant behaviors and measures from hygiene to quality of life. And then you start writing. You said, so let's get this straight. Okay, moving on. In 2020, we saw prominent SAGE members from ICL like Professor Knobhead.
Another misspelling.
Yes.
Typo.
Well, you got so many typos in here. So Professor Knobhead, aka Neil Ferguson, OBE, F Med Sci, pushing the nonsense data probabilities that never actually came true. I could go on, but I won't, as it's starting to make me angry. Lastly, the YouGov slogan is what the world thinks, or more like what the world is made to think. Although I think the clue is in the name, YouGov. I mean, how do you get away with using that name? They're not a government department, well, not officially anyway. They are an opinion-grabbing data collection company. It probably gets away with it because it looks like an intelligence setup, as well as we shall see in a moment. Now, the next paragraph that you get to, and I won't read, but you just tie YouGov and the people behind it to all of the so-called independent-ish think tanks in the US, Stanford University, Hoover Institution, and then an owner of something called Polymetrics, which is maybe a UK, a US similar company to YouGov that YouGov ended up buying. And then it all ties back to the Council on Foreign Relations and the CIA OSS. It's pretty astonishing there
I
what you.
I took pictures of that two it's page 214 and 215. I took pictures of these and I put it in my Telegram group and I said, I've never seen so many think tanks and groups and intelligence agencies and institutes all on one page. I think this double pager is the full house. And I just wanted to mention as well, just to go back slightly to the YouGov thing, um, what's in a name? The page before the part that Melissa just read from on page 211, you've told us that when YouGov was set up in 2000, one of its biggest shareholders was Zahawi's Ball Shore Investments. Ball Shore
Ball.
Investments. And yeah, and then page 214, 215. Let's see if I can get all these on the record. We've got the European Council on Foreign Relations, the Brookings Institute, WEF Young Global Leader, Rockefeller Brothers Fund, George Soros's Open Society Foundations, Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Fabian Society, Young Fabians. We've got Hewlett Foundation, Carlyle Group, Council on Foreign Relations, Bilderberg, Henry Jackson Society, Israel, Rothschild, MI6, Communist Party, Soviet NKVD, Trinity College, RAND, Chatham House, European, oh, I said that one already, Center for Social Cohesion. All on 2 pages linked together. It's amazing. I was, yeah, I had a big grin on my face when I was reading this bit, just going, this is outstanding.
Well,
But
on the
Traitors,
same page you get in there, on the same page you get in there, let's see, Matthew
Did I miss one?
Jameson. Yes, you did miss one. Matthew
Oops.
Jameson, who went to Georgetown School of Foreign Service. And then in parentheses, Dom writes, Georgetown University is associated with scary neurobiologist Professor James Giordano. You may remember the videos that I've played over the years where Giordano is discussing neurosecurity. And then you get in the European Council on Foreign Relations and the Brookings, and oh, you mentioned Brookings, and then it goes on and on and on. Yeah, quite astonishing.
I find it quite interesting when you're doing research and it says, this is the board of directors. And you think, I'll just search that one name and all this information comes up. Or I'll search that one name and all this information comes up. Then you put it all together and you think, jeepers, it's, you know, these people are a bit like the Boris Johnson's friend, Lebedev, Yevgeny Lebedev. And his father was a KGB agent. And he's Boris Johnson's friend, and he owns, I think it's the Observer. I might be wrong there. He owns a major newspaper anyway. And the Independent. He owns the Independent newspaper. And guess who used to own it? Carrie Johnson's father. They sold it. And it's like, what? Hang on a minute. How does that work? It's, you know, these things are all tied. And it doesn't take, all it takes is the effort to do it, to uncover that all these people work for that NGO, and then they also work for that NGO, and they all sit on the Brookings Institute or something else, or John Major works for the Carlyle Group or whatever, you know.
There's another example I've just got to give here because this is one that stood out to me. David Rubenstein. So this is 2 paragraphs. Listen to this. Get your bingo card out, everybody. Get your New World Order bingo card out. We're going to have a game. You are guaranteed to get a full house. David Rubenstein. Rubenstein is a member of the World Economic Forum Board of Trustees, chairman of the Council on Foreign Relations, co-chairman of the Brookings Institution, a member of the Trilateral Commission, founded by Zbigniew Brzezinski and David Rockefeller in 1973. Like his Carlyle Group co-founder, William E. Conway Jr., David Rubenstein is a trustee of the Johns Hopkins School of Medicine that held Event 201 in October 2019. Rubenstein has attended more or less every WEF conference in Davos since 2004, and he's also attended the 65th Bilderberg meeting in Virginia, USA in 2017. The Brookings Institute is another think tank founded in 1916, and throughout the years, it has been funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Carnegie Corporation, Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, Climate Works, Democracy Fund, Hewlett Foundation, Koch Family Foundations, Open Society Foundations, PepsiCo, Rockefeller Brothers Fund, and the Rockefeller Foundation. According to the New York Times, its single biggest foreign donor is the Qatari government. Bingo.
Yeah, full house.
Absolutely. And that, you know, something else too that I noted several times is you can't read this compilation of connections and come out thinking left, right, conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican. You just can't, because if you follow the money, the foundations, and the think tanks, it's all one club. It's all one consortium.
Yeah. Well, the notion that they're all thinking independently is just off the table because they're all funded by the same people, which, again, go on to fund other things like, I don't know, Larry Ellison's the largest funder of the IDF in Israel. Yeah. He's the largest funder. It's out there. It's full front page news somewhere. You can see it.
The same guy who is the largest funder of artificial intelligence initiatives in the United States is the same guy who's the largest funder of the IDF. That ought to make you pause for just a moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because that says that that person is not, I would say, is not in control of that personally. He's the front man that has to do that. But also, he doesn't care. He's willing to slaughter people and control all the AI and all the other data grabbing information. I mean, YouGov is just minute in comparison to that, and they were quite significant. I think YouGov, a $300 million business. I mean, he's got $1 trillion business. It's minute in comparison, but just as important. And again, he's backing Tony Blair. I mean, he's backing Tony Blair and Tony Blair's uh, NGOs. He must know this information that's in here. He must, if he's backed by the CIA would know that information that's in those Tony Blair chapters. They would know that. And yet he's willing to give him tens of millions of dollars to fund his NGOs. That should tell you who these people are, what kind of people we're dealing with.
They're not like us, and they don't like us.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Yeah, it is a good point.
There's so many connections here that just blow mind blowing. Another one that I highlighted was about the film's Inconvenient Truth, which is the Al Gore climate global warming change propaganda.
Yeah, global climate warming change.
Yeah. And the film Contagion, which was a 2011 pandemic film, which you mentioned. Matt, oh, there's a typo here again. Matt Wancock actually said in an interview how lifelike this film Contagion was to the events, the Big C events. Both of those were co-produced by the same film company, Jeff Skoll, who was involved in eBay. You mentioned here, the film company is now defunct. It was called Participant, but just another coincidence. This is just a big book of coincidences, isn't it? Really? Book of coincidence.
And also the eBay guy, he's got a foundation called Lumina, I do believe. Lumina Foundation. They fund a lot of these climate change and stuff like that. And he was a young global leader as well. I forget his name now, but he was the so-called founder of eBay, and he was a young global leader at some point. Jeff Skoll wasn't. But he was the CEO of eBay, and he's a billionaire. They're all part of this Bill Gates giving trust as well that has been supposedly set up. They're going to give all the billions away. It's strange that these people that give all their billions away seem to get more billions. It's amazing. It's an amazing.
It is. That's the secret. Just give it all away, and
yeah. I mean, again, the Revenge of the Nerds, I listed about 10 or 20 people who, when you look at during 2020, their net worths doubled and trebled throughout that. And yet they were front and center funding the operation that was going on. Or supposedly they were funding, probably being told to fund it in some way. And Jeff Skoll was one of them. He gave tens of millions to fund... that's what he's called, Odimar, the guy that set eBay up. That's his surname. I forgot his first name. I think he might be Iranian or Iraqi. But anyway, Lumina is his foundation. But yeah, a lot of these people Dell Computers is another one. He's a big funder of the Israeli cause, if you like. Michael Dell. But he was a young global leader in 1992, I think, 93. I think it was the first year. And all of a sudden, his business selling computers seemed to skyrocket. I think he's worth nearly $100 billion now.
Well, one of the things when I was illustrating the last Redux that went up last Sunday, I was looking at water, data centers, artificial intelligence, and water. And I came on an article that was written in 2012, and it showed way back then the web of money, big money around buying up water rights and aquifers and so forth. And I know, I think there was a connection to Colorado water through Hannah and Marie Strong. I mean, so it's been going on for a long time. So they tend to start stockpiling whatever it is that they're going to make money off of. Same thing here with pharma during COVID. These things, if we had time to follow it, would probably have been set up 10, 15, 20 years ago as they prepare for everybody to make, so the people who made the killing, who, add an extra billion or two or 10 to their, bottom line during COVID, they probably set that up 10 years before COVID. Because we're living, as Alan Watts said, we're living through a script.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think that's another thing this hopefully this work does, is show that this isn't just now. This has been written over generations. That they could not have won the COVID, whatever it was, operation if there hadn't been social media.
Mm-hmm.
There had to be social media because it had to spread through social media, not physically. The news had to spread quickly to make it look like it was spreading around the world, for instance.
Right.
I mean, going on to water, I mean, the guy who was standing in on the WEF, he wrote a paper once. He was one of the lead guys, actually.
Nestle. He was the CEO of Nestle.
That's correct. And he had links to the CIA as well, because he was a director of Nestle, I think in South America, where Nestle was helping the CIA cause a coup in one of the countries. Forget which country it was now. And he was the director at that particular time. So he's got links back to the CIA. I forget, Peter something or other is called.
I can't remember his name.
He actually said that water shouldn't be.
He said it's not a basic human right. It's
exactly. It should be a product. It should be a product that we sell.
Yep. Yeah.
These people are disgusting individuals. They're not.
Like
he might be someone's grandfather, someone's father, but they don't know what he's like. Probably a lot of these people. Behind the scenes, he'll be doing things that, if he went home and told them, they would disown him. Or maybe
they probably don't ask too many questions.
Him.
He's bringing in the bacon, you know. They probably get nice life, cars, treats, holidays, all that good stuff. Yeah. So they probably don't care what daddy does or granddaddy does.
It reminds me of...
He makes chocolate, right?
Yeah. it reminds me of... Well, in Halifax, Nestle, there's a massive factory in Halifax. It's one of the main factories. A lot of the people in Halifax work for Nestle. They don't realise that Nestle's milk in Africa is probably poisoning or sterilising kids or the parents or whatever. And they don't understand what goes on. They've just got a job to do, 9 to 5. Like all people don't understand what level of control we've got over these corporations. I wish we did. I wish people had realised the level of control that we had. For instance, Marks and Spencer in Britain, everybody's lovable Marks and Spencers, but the Zionists, the people that started Marks and Spencer up were Zionists. They were, I think, the president of the Zionist organization. Yeah. What I'm getting at, these are the people like Larry Ellison in the modern day who prop these things up, or the front men or front women of these operations. As we've seen with Trump, people that are backing him are leading him down this path. Even though he's not in control, thinks he is probably, or maybe not. Maybe they've got that much on him, like Tony Blair, that he's got to do it, and he's got no choice in the matter.
Well, I
don't believe he's controlling anything, but
I think probably that narcissistic psychotic that was, defining Boris Johnson would be an apt description. I mean, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I'm just saying that could fit the orange man.
I've got to agree with you. I mean, I think it was a guy called Cohen who was his mentor.
Yes.
His whole training was, you could never be wrong, never admit you're wrong, always say you've won. He's basically training him to be a narcissist. That is a narcissist in essence.
Well, and he was a gangster, really, you know.
Yeah. Which I was just going to say, actually, Melissa, that a lot of these people remind me of gangster bosses. When you watch a film like the old Godfather, all his kids love him. You know, his daughters and things like that. They don't realise he goes around knocking people off and having people assassinated and things like that. And that's what these people remind me of.
Yeah.
They'll just go home, take the tie off, put the slippers on. I'll have a cup of tea. Thank you. You know, and the wife just ignores what's going on. That seems to be what is happening. Yeah. I mean, Sherry Sherry Booth is an interesting character because I think I mentioned it in here actually that she's related to John Wilkes Booth.
Yes.
And a lot of people say she isn't, but all I can go by is what they said themselves. And her father says his father told him he was related to John Wilkes Booth. So,
Well, here, while we're on the subject of actors and relations that are kind of odd, but you're talking about Ben Affleck, and before that, you've just gone through a whole bunch of connections to actors, and then you take Ben Affleck. He's best mates with fellow actor Matt, who's World Economic Forum, Damon, and both are 10th cousins and both are distant cousins of John Hinckley Jr., who was arrested for the attempted assassination of President Ronald Reagan. Hinckley Jr. is also the sixth cousin, one time removed, of Nancy Reagan. Nancy also had a royal bloodline back to Edward III. In keeping with the theme of this book, Affleck and Damon are also cousins of serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer, Mark David Chapman, John Lennon's supposed assassin, and Boris Johnson. To add to this, Affleck and Damon both have royal bloodlines. At least they keep it all in the family, so to speak. And then you go on there with Affleck's royal lineage going back, and his first wife, Jennifer Garner's connections to a CIA recruitment video, and George Clooney with the CFRWEFUN. Remember, I'm going to put another Alan Watt-ism in here. He'd say, they give us our stars so that we follow the stars. And just like the Emily Blunt and her husband who said, "Ooh, got to stay home," and here is us staying home during COVID. In the U.S., I think the first kind of top couple of acting royalty were Tom Hanks and his wife Rita Wilson, who claimed that they were in Australia, I think, on a shoot, and they had to be locked down, oh dear me, in their hotel for weeks before they, but they said it's for the good, and you should stay home too. So these actors are not just anybody either. They're put out so that we emulate monkey see, monkey do. And as you
Remember,
act, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I was going to say, remember Dolly Parton's song where she redid Jolene, but it was
Yes,
vaccine? And
yes,
then didn't Schwarzenegger also tell you, screw your freedom? You
yes.
Screw your
know?
freedom.
Yep.
Yeah. I actually mentioned the Dolly Parton
Jolene,
thing in
yeah,
here.
you
Yeah.
did. I got that.
She did that in the Vanderbilt hospital. So Anderson Cooper, CNN guy, he's a Vanderbilt,
Yes.
and he was a CIA intern as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And when you look at the Vanderbilt, when you go behind the scenes in the Vanderbilt hospital, they were also, I think, pushing the sex change, transhuman type. Yeah, I think I documented a couple of those, and it just adds weight to the information when you see that they're all part of this. Again, going back to the beginning, the transhuman agenda, the eugenics agenda, the population control agenda, wheeling out these stars, like you said, follow the stars. She will have dragged in a certain demographic, and so will Emily Blunt. They'll drag in certain demographics to there. So will all these other people that told us to do that. I think Taylor Swift and her husband, he was an NFL American football player, or is. I think he got a $300 million or $100 million Amazon podcasting deal.
Well, he did a huge ad campaign for to comply and obey with the whole COVID thing. Yeah,
He was
get your
paid something
vaccine.
like $50 million. I forget the amount, but it was like $10 million or $15 million directly from Pfizer.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that was Taylor Swift, isn't it? Yeah, that's Taylor Swift's family, or other half.
Go back
So they
to,
were. Oh, sorry.
Sorry. I was going to go back to Ben Affleck for a second because my wife and I watched the Ben Affleck film last night, and you know how symbolism is everywhere, and they use symbols to communicate with that deep part of our minds, and it's a tell actually. You can see once you learn to recognize the symbols, you can see them everywhere, and it's one of those things you can't unsee. And I said to her just as this film was starting, I said, "How long do you think it'll be into the film until they show us just a one eye on the screen?" Because you see this all the time. And she said, "I reckon 30 seconds." I said, "Okay." The very first scene of the film was a close up of one of Ben Affleck's eyes. And that was it was the
Wow.
very, very first scene of the film. And
Wow.
we
What
just
was it? What
laughed,
was the movie?
It's called Hypnotic. It's on Netflix. It's an absolute steaming pile of garbage. Don't watch it.
Yeah.
Because my brother was telling me that now they make films assuming the audience are going to be on their phones and tablets. So all of the plot points are overstated and repeated in the character's dialogue. So you have this totally unnatural dialogue where people are just repeating the plot points over and over. And it just makes these things totally unwatchable. We watched two films recently and
Well, there's an element of AI script in what you just described there, because that's the way that the chat interacts with you by restating things. So so what you're saying is, and then it restates it. So I guess
yeah.
they're doing scripts that way now too.
Yeah, well, we've mentioned this in our podcast that what Nick's saying is they're writing scripts so the listener or watcher who's doom scrolling at the same time can keep themselves connected to whatever the TV or the film's saying.
Mhm.
And like Nick said, they're just unwatchable, these programs, because we're used to watching a film. You're committed to watching the film, not to doom scrolling on your phone.
Mhm.
But one of the interesting things, just to go on a bit of a side hustle, Boris Johnson, one of his advisors, was a guy called Alex Crowley. I don't know if I mentioned this. So just going back to the backdrops of symbolism, Alex Crowley, we found out that a few years ago, I didn't even know who he was, but he's on his LinkedIn. He's changed his LinkedIn page, by the way, but I've got a copy of it, of his old one. And he actually says he changes minds. Okay. And he is a relation of Alistair Crowley. And we found this out because he was doing a talk at Christian's wife's, she was at a seminar, and he was doing a talk. And the talker before had been talking about the Beatles' Sgt. Pepper album. And when he came up on stage, that image was still there. And he said, "Oh, my uncle," or something like that's on that album cover. Left it at that and carried on talking. But my wife, not my wife, Chris's wife, being sharp, realised it was called Crowley. So when it finished, she followed him to the lift and said, "Are you Alistair Crowley's nephew then?" And he went, "Yes," and then just got in the lift and didn't want to talk to her. So Boris Johnson had Alistair Crowley's nephew, whatever, working with him as an advisor while he was mayor. He actually showed off on his LinkedIn page. He helped get Boris Johnson into power, all these things as well. He worked for British Airways as a PR agent, all a turd polisher. But we also found then several other Crowleys. And one of the interesting one was Nathan Crowley. And Nathan Crowley is a set designer in a film. That's why it popped up. So Nathan Crowley is a set designer on like the Batman films, with what's he called, the guy that did all the Batman films recently, the English guy.
Christopher Nolan.
So Christopher Nolan, then, that set me off on a little research thing. So Nathan Crowley is a definite nephew of Alistair Crowley, and he's the set production. He's won Oscars for set production. So when you're putting messengers in, who's the ideal guy? Then someone putting, and obviously if they've got a Crowley link, I mean, talk about a bloodline. I mean, jeepers.
Mhm.
But the Nolans are interested as well. This is how research works. People often ask me, can you train me how to do research? Like I'm going to set some sort of research academy up, but you couldn't do it because you sort of, a friend of mine, we did a podcast about 3 weeks ago mentioning some of the new areas of research is Yoko Ono, and she was put into a psychiatry a hospital in the late 1950s, early 60s. And I said to him, which hospital was it? And he said, oh, I don't know. And I thought, that is it. I'm triggered. I'm going to find out which hospital she went into and who the damn people were that were treating her. Yeah. And that's how it works. And likewise with Nathan Crowley, I thought, oh, the Nolan. But the Nolan brothers, obviously, one of them did Oppenheimer, and another one did another nuclear, I think it was called Fallout. So he did his brother did Fallout, which was an Amazon series about nuclear apocalypse.
Yeah, based on a computer game, yeah.
Yeah, and Christopher Nolan did Oppenheimer all at the same time. Yeah? Right. That can't be a real... But what topped this off, they've got an older brother called Matthew. I think he's called Matthew. In the early 2000s, he was accused of being an assassin, knocking off some... I don't know if you've heard this story before, Nick, but...
No.
He was accused of being an assassin and killing somebody in Costa Rica, and they actually put out. He was locked up in Chicago, and he escaped this prison in Chicago, and they said in like a Batman style escape. Okay, now he had a pseudonym, so this is 2004, probably best part nearly 20 years before his brother did. Christopher Nolan did Oppenheimer. His pseudonym was Matthew Oppenheimer. Again, it's in the newspapers. Yeah, it's in the court descriptions. So these are two guys that are doing films, major films, big films, and their brother is an assassin or a wanted assassin, let's say, a supposed assassin.
That reminds me of we're
So
straying
weird.
into film territory now, but there was a film called, I think it's Confessions of a Dangerous Mind,
Yes.
and based on a real guy, Chuck Barris, who
Yeah,
created the dating game.
Yes.
Yeah. That was,
I thought that film was very entertaining. I don't know if there's any truth to it. I know he's written a book though, hasn't he?
Yeah.
Well, evidently Chuck Barris was a piece of work. I don't know how true the movie was, but
But it was the same sort of idea. It was that crossover between show business and military, which reminds us of sort of Dave McGowan with the music industry and all the lineages from military families. And again, just that crossover, that interlinking. It's sort of like each generation has a different role. Like if your dad was a journalist, then you're going to be a movie star, and then maybe your children will be a politician, and then your children will be bankers, and your children will have a startup that becomes, and they kind of just swap, and it's like a revolving door, and they're just in and out of all.
Didn't George Clooney? Was he the director of that film? Dangerous.
I think you might be right.
He's obviously got links to CIA and the World Economic Forum, definitely the Council of Foreign Relations. He works for George Clooney. His wife also represented Julian Assange.
yes, she's an interesting character too.
She's a young Labour leader as well.
Yeah.
She's got a prominent bloodline. Syrian, I think. Prominent bloodline.
Yeah. Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, directed by George Clooney.
George Clooney's from an interesting bloodline as well.
Yes.
The Huguenots. Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, another coincidence. he was pushing the jabs as well. I've got a video of him saying people are basically idiots and they need to get in line. We made a few mistakes. He said, this is his exact words. This is how you know that these people aren't like us. Yeah, a few years ago, the same thing was with the polio jab. It killed a bunch of kids, but we got it right eventually. It was so people start listening. I've got the interview on.
Well, did you, speaking of actors used as tools and saying psychotic things that we don't understand, did you see the footage of Tom Cruise going off on his cast and crew while he was trying to film during COVID, screaming at them because they weren't, wearing masks and doing what they were supposed to be doing, and yeah, it was filmed, and I think some of that went viral online. This was probably
I never saw that.
Yeah. He was yelling at him, saying that they were the fortunate few who were able to work during that time, and they were going to show up on time. They were going to socially distance. They were going to have, they were going to wash their hands. They were going to do all this, and they were going to be vaccinated. And I mean, he was just screaming at him, and somebody filmed it.
Wow.
Well, that teased me up nicely for another thing I wanted to ask you about which was Porton Down. So we
Oh
mentioned
yeah.
already the Contagion film, the way we are sort of prepared for these events very early ahead of time. 9/11 was a similar thing. There was album covers, there was Simpsons episodes, there were all these depictions of that sort of event in various mediums to sort of seed that possible reality into people's minds so that when it came along they would accept it, right? And I think the
Mm.
Big C event was no different. So but this really it's like what you mentioned about Porton Down is this experimenting on people, and George Clooney's quote just reminded me of that. Well, we killed a few people, but we got it right eventually. Like there's
Yeah.
no qualms about just test this thing out on that group of people over there and see what happens, take some notes, watch it from afar,
Mm.
and then refine it and carry on. So yeah, could you tell us a little bit about Porton Down and what your research
Well,
uncovered there?
I remember doing the Chris Whitty presentation, and they'd rolled out a particular jab, and they tested it in a village, and it was I think, part of the Wellcome Trust NGO, and they'd obviously wiped a few people out in that village, and these are the people that were running that. But he was part of the Novichok scenario. Was Chris Whitty working out of Porton Down? If you remember, everyone remember the Novichok, the two Russians that were supposedly poisoned by Russian, wherever they were, but
In
obviously it was
Surrey,
just
just
some
down the
kind of,
road, wasn't it?
it was just kind of, it was just some kind of operation that was going on. So Porton Down's been there since World War II. I think it's probably intrinsically linked with the Tavistock operation. And what got me with Porton Down, what got that first on my radar, I suffered with a condition called Lyme disease for many, many years in a bad way. And I realised that Porton Down was our Fort Detrick. And they were, so if you thought you might have Lyme disease, you get bitten by a toxic tick, if you like, they send your test down to Porton Down. So the very people that are probably developing these things, they're sending your test down to. They did the same Fort Detrick. A lot of these modified ticks were injected. There's lots of books being written about this. They're injecting them with modified bacteria, and then dropping them the length and breadth of America, hundreds of thousands of ticks, to see what would happen. And same thing probably happened in the UK. Although I didn't find any evidence of that happening in the UK and Europe, but there has been an explosion of ticks. So I can only put it down to that they did the same thing. Anyway, so Porton Down were running operations throughout during World War II, actually, to sort of simulate what the class as Nazi Germany dropping a biological weapon onto Britain. And they were simulating it by using a biological weapon on Britain, which is interesting. Mainly zinc cadmium, which is obviously a toxin, and a derivative of anthrax. I won't try and pronounce the Latin name, but they did it in hundreds of different sorties up and down Britain.
So in the name
hundreds as
of
well.
defending against the Germans doing something, they just did it
Yeah.
themselves.
They did it themselves. And then obviously after World War II ended in the Cold War, the excuse was they were doing it in case the Russians developed a biological weapon to do. So off the coast of Poole, Lyme Regis, ironically, they were spraying from a UK, British Navy gunboat. They were spraying these toxins across whatever 20, 30 kilometre radius from the sea, as well as dropping it from the air. They also dropped this stuff in the London Underground to see how far it would travel up and down the underground. monitor people who were off work and things like that. And a few years later, they were finding that these areas had birth defects. I think it was Norwich and that area got battered big time, and areas of Scotland, and lung issues, respiratory issues. Which, I mean, there's been an explosion of these illnesses throughout the last few decades: asthma, lung cancers, things like that. And they were doing the same in America as well. They were mirroring what they were doing here in America. They were using the New York subway, doing the same thing. I think there's a guy doing it out of a briefcase, just walking up and down, just spraying this clear, wherever it was, up and down the New York subway. Out of car exhaust. There were vans driving up and down the motorways, spraying this stuff out. These are the people that are protecting us. They also develop Botox as well, that people seem to like injecting into the face.
You've got to wonder too about the minds. I mean, what happens? Do they set out with the objective in mind? We're going to figure out something that we can do that paralyzes people but doesn't kill them, or do they just say, "Hey, we got some pig botulism. What do you think it does?" I don't know. Mess around with it a bit.
Do you know that eugenics? I mean, I know you guys have done a lot of work on it. Alan certainly did, didn't he? Eugenics and transhumanism. We only see the bad sides of it. Yeah. There has to be positive sides to it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be experimenting. There has to be something that they pull out of that they think, wow, we've just found something amazing here. We won't release it to the general public.
Well, that's what allows Kissinger to live till he's 100 years old. And
possibly.
Yeah,
or maybe
David Rockefeller.
Exactly. And they've still got the mind as well. Again, going back to Peter Thiel. I mean, I've talked about this quite a lot. Peter Thiel, a few years ago, denied being a vampire. Why would he deny being a vampire? I mean, we spoke about it on one of the live shows, didn't we? We showed that headline, but yet he apparently has the young blood of teenagers injected into him. These things are happening, whether we like to think they are or not. We know they're happening. There is. People always have a go at me. I don't know if you know this, but I've got a natural health clinic. Because we've got Lyme disease, we set up a natural health clinic, me and my wife. I'd sold my businesses, and we've got nurses that work in there helping people with Lyme disease and other illnesses. But I use a lot of high-dose vitamin C. And people say, that was founded by Linus Pauling, who was a eugenicist and a Mason and all this stuff. But not all the things that these people find are bad for you. It goes without saying that not everything's going to be destructive. Mm-hmm. You've just got to weed out what helps and what doesn't help. We use those.
The word eugenics means to improve the stock, improve the genes, and it's better thought of as eugenics for them and dysgenics for the rest of us, because while they're keeping things pretty tight, keeping it in the family, so to speak, keep it in the bloodlines, and keeping a very close eye on the quality of their own stock, they're doing all sorts of crazy things, as you wrote about here, porting down the experimentations, the chemicals they put in the food, the water, the air, the furniture, everything you can possibly think of. Every vector of attack is weaponized against us. But of course, good information they're doing all this to make sure that they can stay in control and keep themselves on top of the pyramid.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
there's a very, there is a component of it, like better stock. Look at the, Darwin's and Wedgwoods. They had all of these children who were, either died young or had mental disability or suffered with depression because of inbreeding. So they're looking at how can we keep our breed pure without any of these problems that happen when you're doing close breeding like that. And yet, of course, they do think that they are doing something good for themselves. And I think the same can be said about transhumanism and posthumanism. I talked to James Giordano and specifically about transhumanism and posthumanism. And I believe that many of these people are true believers. They really do believe that augmenting and enhancing humans is a good thing. they'll just line right up for that themselves because they get added, lifespan or better quality of life or whatever it is they're after. I think many of them are true believers, and that's interesting to me.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think they are true. Also, a lot of people get into something where they think this one part that they are researching or developing, that is harmless. But when these other 5 parts are added that they don't know about, it all of a sudden, because the investment says we've got to add these other 5 parts to that one part that isn't harmless, is harmless, that makes it harmful. And they've got no control over that. And you hear that a lot, don't you, with people that have... I tend to look at, if somebody sets a business up, generally that person, when they get investment, is weeded out and they're not part of that business going forward. And it's a similar process. That scientist that might find this fantastic thing is weeded out because someone else can see it as a weapon or to be weaponized.
And then you might have like a compartmentalization as well, where you're working on there was in a G. Edward Griffin book where he talked about, he used an example of these factories, I think in World War II Germany. And he was saying the people thought they were building prams or something, and they just built their little widget, their little gadget on the assembly line. But then when you put it all together, it was a machine gun,
Yeah.
So like, you don't know what the finished picture is, what the finished product is. You're just doing your little bit that you're working on, and you're obsessed, you're specialized. And only the very high level management have the holistic picture of like, okay, this is where it all leads from the beginning of the production to the assembly, to the end of the assembly line.
You mentioned earlier PepsiCo. So people drink, I mean, I don't drink that type of stuff, but people drink Pepsi or eat Cadbury's chocolate or whatever. But a few years ago, a company called Cenomics developed this product, call it a product. It was the taste receptors from an aborted fetus cell to enhance the flavour. It cut down on sugar. Yeah. So it enhanced the sweetness, yeah, without actually having to put more sweetener in it.
Sugar in.
Yeah. So a lot of that is used in like skim milks and things like this. Not in normal skim milk. I'm on about for the chocolate. I think Kraft were using it, who own Cadbury's. There's been a big talk about changing chocolate at the moment. I do take note of what's going on, even though I don't eat the stuff. But because they've now changed the name. It's not Cenomics anymore. It got bought out. It's Cenomics. It got taken. I think we're on the stock market. But when you see things like this that just disappear, just like the jabs when they're using HEC 293 in jabs, and when I say to people that jab has dog cells in it or rat cells, they call them cell lenses, and really what they are either aborted fetus cells or they're using a specific dog as well. I think it was a Cocker Spaniel. Don't know why a Cocker Spaniel. But these are reproduced cells. These are cells that reproduce. It's like an immortal cell. But yeah, so even in our confectionery that people have as a treat, let's just say, some of it might have this Cenomics product in that's now been hidden. Now, these have got patents that they're worth millions. They're not just going to throw them away. They were licensed and everything. It's only because of the backlash that PepsiCo got. You can see the PepsiCo. So there's a news article out there saying PepsiCo is going to drop this Cenomics product from there because of the backlash and wherever.
And then all
these are the type of products. Then they just rebrand it, call it a different name. And it's hidden.
I noticed that in a lot of the books I read about, I've read about like foundations, Fabian Society, and they'll start a group and it'll be some think tank or it'll be some council or institute, and then they'll get a bit of heat and then they'll rebrand it. And this is just this ongoing process. The same people up to the same schemes and the same plans, but when they get some heat, drop that word and pops a new word, but it's the same agenda, right? The classic example is eugenics, right? That got too hot, World War II. We can't be openly advocating for that anymore. Get rid of that. And now it's just, biological genetics. And
23andMe. It's a trendy thing, isn't it? 23andMe. Data collection. Then use YouGov to do the mind data collection. or companies like that. Sorry, we've drifted off topic, haven't we? I have a tendency to do that.
That's all right. No, it's fascinating. Let me ask you a question. How is the reception for the book?
Um, in what how people have got back to me and said what they think. A
Yes.
similar reception to what you guys have said, really, because it always fascinates me. But I'm not really a great seller of it, to be honest with you. I haven't done many shows to try and push it from a numbers perspective. It was always a plan just to get it out there for me. I, but my backstory is I had a business. I was pretty hardcore sales, not in a bad way, but that's what I used to do. And since I got out of the corporate side, I just don't want to push anything anymore. But the feedback I've had is the cat put it down, which is quite good. I wanted it to be data information rich, so every line was wow, oh wow, because that's what I want to read. Hence why I think in the opening I said that instead of having things at the bottom of the page that explain something, I've kept them in the narrative because I didn't want to have the sort of source, the notes at the bottom of a chapter or whatever, because you sort of lose the rhythm of where it's going. I wanted to go off in a direction and come back, a bit like what we've done tonight, I suppose.
But even though a lot of the information makes you quite angry or sad or disgusted, your own personality and spirit comes through here, and it's so almost every page has got a laugh or a chuckle on it, which is I mean, that's a real feat considering how dark and evil, frankly, the subject matter is.
Yeah, we do get a bit of grief for that, me and Chris, when we're talking about dark subject matters. I think we've been called Beavis and Butthead. Which I quite like, actually. That's all right. Some people like you to be dark and miserable all the time, but we can't be like that. It's just not us. And I didn't try and force humor or anything like that into it. It just comes out like Professor Knobhead, and that's how we talk, you know. Savage Jabhead, you know, we would come up with silly names because I think it lessens these people a little bit. One thing this New World Order parasite can't handle is being laughed at. It needs to be taken seriously. That's what I think.
Well, it's just funny. I find it hilarious because I do the same thing. I have names for everybody. And like we had one, they've demoted her now, but her name was Christy Nome. She was a governor, I think, of Idaho or somewhere. But anyway, they made her the head of Homeland Security. And she was the one who sent ICE out that mowed all these people down. And she wrote an autobiography right before she got her big promotion in which she was bragging about how she killed the family dog because it wasn't, well, she said it was a farm dog, but you know, whatever. It wasn't a good guard dog. It was a little out of control and violent. And so she put it down. So I used to call her Christy Dog Killer Gnome. And then I saw
straight to the point, Melissa.
Yeah. Then she was doing her ICE. She was posing with the machine guns and all the ICE, which are the border patrol people. And she had so much Botox. Speaking of Botox, it was like all on her forehead and her puffed out lips and everything. And I'm like, oh no, she's got to have a new name. So I called her Christy Botox Head Dog Killer Gnome. It's long. It's a long name.
I'm glad you just added to it instead of, you kept the dog killer bit. That's good.
Oh yeah.
She certainly had the dog killer eyes.
Yep, yeah. So, you've got a lot of that through here, and you have, well, as Alan would say, you've got to laugh or you cry.
Yeah. And Chris did the cover, by the way.
Okay.
Yeah, Chris did the design for the cover.
And all tons of illustrations inside the book, which are just wonderful. Speaking of what is it, Jabhead? What's his name?
I was just looking for the illustration to go with him. It's hilarious. Here he is. Oh, I thought I had him there, but I can't find it now. Yeah, the humor, the illustrations, the screenshots, like all of it. There he is. There's Savage Jabhead for anybody. He looks like Mr. Potato Head. Yeah.
You see, Chris is. He said, "Oh, don't put them drawings in. They're not that good." I said, "You're having there's they're fantastic. You don't realize, you know.
No, they're
That's the problem
fantastic. They
with,
really make it.
as I call him, arty farty, limp wristed. I won't swear. Uh, but that's the problem with those types. They're never quite satisfied with. I said, it's finished. You don't need to do any more. That's it, done. Anyway, he didn't have any choice. I put him in anyway.
Well, it is. It's a fantastic, like all round package. It was better than I thought it was going to be. Not that I had
Good.
any like it just I didn't really have any expectations. I just thought I get it, I'll read it, we'll talk about it. And as I was going through it, I was like, this is really, really fantastic as a book. I'm so happy to have it in my collection. It's one that I can point to and loan out to people and like Melissa said, go back to and check just to refresh my terrible memory of things when I need to. It's a real gift that you've given us to have brought this into the world and put it out there. So get
Thank
selling
you.
it.
I also use it as a textbook, and I do go back through it and say, oh yeah, that, that. So I use it as the same thing as well.
No, it is going to be a great kind of go-to resource, and I can't say that about a lot of books, but one where you're going to pick it up and say, now, what was that about? Because you cover so many people, and just that and I'm going to get a little bit more of your personality in here. You're discussing, you say, on a slight detour. One of the most standout things about the majority of male PMs since the 70s is that they all seem to have an effeminate feel about them. There were Sir Ted Heath, Sir John Major, Sir Tony Blair, Gordon Brown, Baron David Cameron, Rishi Sunak, and now Mr. Muscle himself, Sir Keir Starmer, all of whom come across as slightly effeminate. Johnson is actually the only masculine PM in that bunch, unless you include Baroness Thatcher or Baroness Treason May. They're both more manly than them all. Love it. Another typo there. Treason, is it not Teresa?
Damn, got another one in.
No, I really enjoyed this. I'm still reading, and after about let's see, was it a total of 32 chapters when I got to about 2022? I thought I got to pick up the pace, so I just started kind of flying
Yeah,
through and making notes where things jumped out at me. But it's definitely a good one to read thoroughly.
it's 36 chapters. Yeah, I think there was about 180,000 words roughly. I was quite surprised because I just kept writing, so I had to edit. I had to edit quite a bit out. There was going to be 180 pages of source notes. We had to reduce the font to get down to about 100 pages.
No, it's really readable. It's
Mm.
it's very readable and that's the thing too. I had a lot on my plate when we started here, and Nick said several weeks ago, "How are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I got okay, I can't lie. I." He said, "Hey," he said, "You know what? For something that is so information dense, this is highly readable. There's no AI in it. It's just Dom's personality coming through. It's very easy to read." And so, with that bit of encouragement, I dived in.
I've got to say, they do take some writing as well. Like I said, I needed when that chap passed away. That was a double kick up the arse to carry on because it brought me right back to 2020 again. I was about halfway through it, but yeah.
And that's the thing, like people want to forget. A lot of people want to forget. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to revisit it. They don't want to revise their memories, their understanding of what happened. I find hardly anybody wants to talk about it. They just say during COVID, and then move on. And it's like, yeah, but what do you mean when you say that? What actually happened? What did we live through? What did we all go through there? And this is one of the things that I mention quite a lot when people are trying to work out, the past and history. And I know you got John Hamer to help you with some of the editing, and he's written many books, the falsification of history being one of them. And I say, people can't even remember what happened 4 years ago, 5, 6 years ago accurately, so trying to understand further back, it's a real mission. So,
Yeah.
what you've done here is you've given people something solid, tangible, backed up with publicly available information. It's not theory, it's not spin, it's not wild, wacky ideas about what might be, could have been. It's like facts and
Mm.
information that you can really depend on and rely on, and it can help people to make sense of that when they eventually decide to revisit that mass global trauma that was perpetrated on us.
Well, hopefully by then I'll have another one out.
I can't wait for the next one. I really can't.
Cheers,
Yes.
guys.
Yes, thanks so much. I think I'm remembering it's a fair bit later there. It's bedtime. It's bedtime in
Yeah.
England.
Sleep, sleep.
So I'm glad we did this. This was fun, a joint production.
Yeah,
And
I
thanks,
think
Nick.
it was a lot of fun. Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dom. Thank you for writing the book. Looking forward to the next. Thank you for writing the next ones. I'll thank you in advance,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
and maybe that'll help you get them done quicker because I'm looking forward to them
Yeah.
very much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
you're a natural.
well, we'll see. Yeah. Hopefully. I enjoy the process.
That's good, good. Well, I thank us all. I thank us all.
Yeah.
And I hope that you've enjoyed watching this and listening to it. I'm sure you have. So, and if you haven't, I don't want to hear about it.
It's your own fault if you haven't really.
That's
Like
it.
you
You
sat here
should.
for 2 hours, 10 minutes, not enjoying it. You could have turned it off at
Yeah.
any point.
All right. Well, we will sign off and we can hang on here for another minute, but I'm going to stop recording and thank you all.
Bye bye.
Thank you very much.